Hi. You have legs and arms, pretty cool, right? You can run, jump, and climb on stuff. But did you know that throughout history, humans have been fighting each other? How did this all begin? Let's take a journey through time to explore the evolution of martial arts and the rise of mixed martial arts, MMA. A long time ago, in a place that feels both nowhere and everywhere, humans decided to fight each other. Some allowed kicks, while others preferred punches. Their styles were very different, yet they were getting closer together, merging and evolving into something extraordinary. Meet the Emperor of China, who fought against a demon in the first ever championship of the world, right in the heart of China. Meanwhile, in Greece, the ancient Greeks allowed everything except biting and poking in the eyes. Thoughtful, right? And China? They created their own version of martial arts, inspired by the mighty panda. Over in Thailand, they had the brilliant idea of incorporating elbows and knees into their fighting style. Fast forward to the early 1800s, and martial arts began transforming into actual sports with proper competitions. This fusion of different martial arts styles led to the creation of even crazier forms of combat. Enter Bruce Lee, the world-famous martial artist who said, "Do whatever the hell you can." Well, not exactly like that, but you get the idea. Bruce Lee made some iconic movies and essentially tried to answer the age-old question, what's the best way to fight? Imagine a tough guy contest where everyone had to prove their fighting style. This fresh new sport had basically no rules, no weight classes, and no gloves. Some bright minds thought about creating the first MMA organization, blending wrestling, boxing, and submission fighting. This was the birth of Shuto, which still exists today. Then came the UFC, founded in 1993, not by Dana White, but by other pioneers. The first event, UFC 1, had no rules, no weight classes, and no time limits. It was raw and brutal, a true spectacle. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter Royce Gracie became the tournament star, defeating much larger opponents and paving the way for what we now know as MMA. Some say the term MMA was coined by UFC referee Joe McCarthy, who missed work to referee UFC 1. Where were you last Friday, John? Oh, just refereeing a martial arts event, combining all of them together. Wait. We just missed the first ever submission in MMA history. Royce Gracie defeated his opponent with a rear-naked choke during the semi-finals, becoming the first UFC champion. In another memorable fight, Keith Hackney repeatedly punched Joe's son in the balls, legal at the time, making it one of the most brutal low blows in history. As the sport evolved, rules were introduced to make fights safer and more regulated. Weight classes and timed rounds were established, and women's fighting became a reality. Wake up, bro. The women's fight is over. And guess who became the UFC commentator? Joe Rogan. You know, the bald podcast guy who shot Elon Musk with a bow. But the UFC struggled initially. People were watching, but they weren't making any money. We'll worry about that later. Have you seen these knockouts? The longest fight in MMA history occurred in Japan, lasting a full 90 minutes before one fighter won by TKO. Despite this, the UFC was still in trouble financially. Enter Tito Ortiz, who, unhappy with his pay, decided to buy the UFC for $2 million, a steal for a company valued at over $40 million. In 2005, the UFC's big breakthrough came with The Ultimate Fighter, a reality TV show where amateur fighters competed for a professional contract. The finale featured a legendary fight between Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar, which was a total war. They beat the living daylights out of each other, and the event exploded in popularity, saving the UFC. Throughout the 2000s, new legends emerged: Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, and Georges St-Pierre. Chuck Liddell's knockout power captured fans' hearts, while Anderson Silva held the middleweight title for a record-breaking 2,457 days, solidifying his place as one of the greatest fighters of all time. The first MMA event to sell 1 million pay-per-views was UFC 66, featuring a rematch between Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. Liddell won by TKO, and Dana White kept his shorts and gloves as a trophy to annoy Ortiz. In 2008, former WWE wrestler Brock Lesnar joined the UFC, skyrocketing in popularity. New fighters like Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, and Khabib Nurmagomedov began to dominate the scene. Ronda Rousey became the first female fighter to sign with the UFC, paving the way for women in the sport. UFC 100 was a monumental event, achieving 1.6 million pay-per-views. It featured Brock Lesnar vs Frank Mir and Georges St-Pierre vs Thiago Alves, two main events in one night. Jon Jones made history as the youngest MMA champion ever at UFC 128. Jon Jones was challenged by Olympic gold medalist Daniel Cormier, and despite the hype, their fight became one of the most boring in history. Silva, known for his spectacular fighting style, faced criticism for avoiding exchanges, leading to boos from the crowd. But then came the Diaz brothers, Nick and Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz shocked the world by submitting Conor McGregor at UFC 196, proving that even the loudest trash talkers can be humbled. Their rematch at UFC 202 broke pay-per-view records and became one of the biggest fights in MMA history. Demetrius "Mighty Mouse" Johnson, the first UFC flyweight champion, defended his title a record 11 times, dominating the division for 6 years. He's widely regarded as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters ever. Did you know the fastest knockout in MMA history happened in a King of the Cage fight, clocking in at just 3 seconds? In the UFC, Jorge Masvidal knocked out Ben Askren with a flying knee in just 5 seconds, earning the BMF belt. Conor McGregor made history by becoming the first fighter to hold 2 UFC titles simultaneously. His press conference antics became legendary, especially when he roasted Jeremy Stevens, asking, "Who the F*** is that guy?" Jon Jones has had a tumultuous career, facing multiple controversies, including drug use and legal issues. Yet he remains one of the greatest fighters, defeating Daniel Cormier in their highly anticipated rematch. The most watched MMA event ever was UFC 229, featuring Khabib Nurmagomedov vs Conor McGregor. Their intense rivalry, fueled by personal insults, drew over 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. Khabib won via submission, leaving McGregor tapping out in the 4th round. Khabib shocked the world by retiring in 2020, following the passing of his father, who was also his coach. He remains undefeated with a perfect record of 29 wins. Meanwhile, Jon Jones continues to dominate with 27 wins and only 1 controversial loss. Founded in 2008, Bellator has become the biggest competitor to the UFC, attracting famous fighters like Tito Ortiz and Quinton "Rampage" Jackson. Rampage left the UFC due to contract disputes and went on to have iconic fights in Bellator. Fedor Emelianenko, known as the Last Emperor, was unstoppable from 2000 to 2010, going nearly a decade undefeated. He later joined the Russian government, proving that his legacy extends beyond the cage. Today, fighters like Islam Makhachev, trained by Khabib, are making waves in the UFC. The sport continues to evolve, with exciting matchups and rising stars. But why isn't MMA in the Olympics yet? MMA has grown tremendously since its inception, evolving from a no-holds-barred spectacle to a regulated sport with a global following. It has captured the imagination of fans worldwide, blending various martial arts into a unique and dynamic fighting style. The rise of organizations like the UFC and Bellator has brought MMA into the mainstream, showcasing incredible talent and thrilling matchups that keep fans on the edge of their seats. As we look to the future, the landscape of MMA continues to change. With new fighters emerging and established stars fighting to maintain their dominance, the competition remains fierce. Fans eagerly anticipate each event, hoping for unforgettable moments and epic battles. The question remains, what will the future hold for MMA? Will we see new legends rise, or will the current champions continue to reign supreme? As MMA continues to grow, so does its impact on sports culture and society. The sport has transcended boundaries, bringing together diverse fighting styles and athletes from around the world. It has fostered a sense of community among fans, who come together to support their favorite fighters and celebrate the sport they love. In conclusion, the evolution of martial arts into MMA has been a fascinating journey. From its ancient origins to the modern-day spectacle, the sport has undergone significant transformations. With each fight, we witness the culmination of years of training, dedication, and passion. As we continue to follow the sport, we can only imagine the incredible stories that await us in the world of MMA. So, are you ready for the next chapter in this thrilling saga? The fight is just beginning.